Hello, I'm Lord Montagu and I'm standing here in the first floor of Palace House, where a few years ago I created an exhibition to show people the wonderful artwork and embroidery my mother created through the years. Now, it's actually about almost exactly 2 years since she died, and I'm making this video now because come the new year, this exhibition will be coming out and a new bedroom will be created with a lot of my mother's work in it, so it won't be disappearing from public view forever. But I did want to make a record of this exhibition now and also show you what you can come and see at Beaulieu between now and the new year. So this panel is just an introductory illustration of the many types of work my mother undertook. She actually trained as a painter and then went on to become a commercial artist, and it was only in later years that she became a really wonderful embroiderer. These depictions of early motoring costumes are the first major work that she did in embroidery, long before she had any training in this type of medium. My father commissioned her to do these for his new motor museum in 1958-59, just before they were married. The commission was for 6. In fact, she only ever completed 4, but these used to hang in the Montagu Motor Museum and then later in the museum's collection centre, but I now have them here in Palace House. So it's sort of going through from 1902, 1906, particularly emphasising the ladies' fashions and the need to wear a veil to keep the dust off your head in early cars, which were of course open and going on very dusty roads. And here are some of the sketches that she produced in working these up. So for example, these two paintings are in fact the studies which were turned into this costume. Interestingly, we also have the studies for the 2 that she didn't make. This is for First World War one with 2 ambulance drivers in military costume, and this was the beginning of the 1920s, which again didn't get made. And shortly after they got married, my parents went on a tour of South Africa with several cars from the Motor Museum on a sort of travelling exhibition. And these actually went with them. So these have had quite a history because they've travelled around southern Africa on exhibition. And I still think they're wonderful pieces. Everything done in embroidery except the faces, which are sort of photographic reproductions of old engravings, but I'm very fond of them and I'm very pleased to have them back in Palace House. But there's much more. We've got many of her embroideries and other artworks on the wall. For example, this lovely wall hanging inspired by Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is a depiction of Titania, Queen of the Fairies, sleeping. I think this is, not totally sure what this was produced for, possibly a menu cover for the annual estate dinner. We're not totally sure. Over here we've got a study she made of me. I remember standing to do this when I was about 13 years old. This is an example of mixed media. There's a screen print on fabric, on top of which there's applique and other bits of machine embroidery, different materials, leather, old bits of material. And here, lovely bedhead she created for my sister, based on a jungle dream, which is rather lovely, sort of rather inspired by the painting by Rousseau called A Tiger in a Tropical Storm. That tiger has very much has that look from that painting. Another mixed media piece is this, which I will show you another version of later as a painting, but this is decidedly mixed media again, with screen printing and machine embroidery and various bits of applique. This was her parrot Bilbo, who was an African grey. if you put your hand anywhere near him, he would have your finger. Very vicious animal. But he did learn to talk. And he particularly learnt to imitate my mother calling the dogs. And of course, her whippets absolutely hated it when they found themselves being called not by their owner, but by the parrot. And through the window, you can just see a tiny bit of what was her showman's caravan, which she bought to take to traction engine rallies. And we had some wonderful times in that. But as I say, we will come back to this image later. Here you can see various cushions she created. This was made for the drawing room at Palace House some years ago, when this was the carpet pattern, and she copied it exactly on this cushion with the Montagu griffin crest in the centre and the lozenges. Now up here, this is a reminder of some of the wonderful trips my mother did around the world. She's seen here on a boat in the Beagle Channel, in the deep in the Southern Ocean off Chile, and you can possibly make out all the broken ice there. This was a special yacht that was designed for going through ice, and it must have been very, very cold. And as you can see, she's illustrated the frame with some of the bird life that she saw on that trip. And below is my sister Mary with her son, my nephew Ben, who is now 25. So this was when he was, about 2 years old, if that, with various depictions of his life in an imaginary little chitty chitty bang bang there. And my mother's dog of the time, actually no, I think it was my whippet at the time, that would have been Tigger. So rather a lovely depiction there of early life for Ben. A cushion my mother made for my sister Mary. Now these plates here, finger plates from doors and door knobs, these are part of a series, the rest of which are still in the nursery bathroom. And these were created by my mother to coincide with my birth and the creation of a new nursery suite in Palace House. And they are lovely. These ones depict fairies, essentially, fairies and birds. They're just delightful. This cushion my mother made for me with my initials RDSM. There is actually a whippet here at the top, if you can see it, because my mother and I both had whippets. I also had guinea pigs at the time. There's a guinea pig there. And she even put a little locomotive there just as an acknowledgement there to my little obsession, or even my big obsession with steam railways. This is a particular favourite of mine. This piece of canvas work I remember my mother doing in the 1960s, and there it lay for years and years unfinished, and I finally persuaded her to put it on this cushion with the family motto Spectum Agendo, which means judge us by our actions, with a little griffin supporter there. And that is the view, perhaps difficult to make out, the view of Palace House through the arch of the gatehouse. Perhaps I can just bring you round here to show you two really lovely embroidered picture frames. Again, here is my nephew Ben in a model Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which was exhibited in the museum for a while. This frame really is a beautiful piece of embroidery and commemorates the Queen Mother and Queen Eleanor. Now, the occasion that this photograph depicts was when the Queen Mother visited Winchester in 1986, and my mother recreated this double cushion based on the cushions that are shown in the effigy of Queen Eleanor in Westminster Abbey. Now, the Queen Eleanor connection is that there's a Queen Eleanor's garden in Winchester, and that's what the Queen Mother had come to see. And so there she is being presented with this double cushion, which my mother created for the occasion. This piece definitely deserves a mention. My mother made this for her granddaughter, my niece Amelia, when she was very young. I think she actually made it on a course which she attended over 2 weekends. And essentially it was made by gluing together lots of layers of wood of different colours to make this sort of laminate, which was then shaped. So you get these wonderful sort of lines coming through. And it's just the right size, actually, for a smallish child. Lovely thing. And another way that she expressed her great love of horses. Finally, in the corridor here, an example of the conceptual drawing for one of her works, and then the final result. I don't think that this is supposed to depict anyone in particular, but it's very much in the Art Nouveau style, and one of many wall hangings that my mother created. So I'm now going to take you into what was the master bedroom, and indeed will be again in the future, but for the last few years has been the main area for my mother's exhibition, if you'd like to follow me. So just here in the lobby, I particularly like to point out this painting. When my sister and I were helping my mother sort out her workroom, which she had rather allowed to get into decline in her old age, we found this painting unframed upside down with bird droppings all over it. And we really were not sure what the story was behind it. Well, we managed to get the painting repaired and restored and framed. And then we found this photograph, which shows my mother as a much younger woman standing beside it with her cat. So there is no question at all that it is her work. And in fact, this photograph on the left shows her in a very similar costume. So we think that this was a sort of self-portrait. As you will be seeing shortly, she absolutely loved circus imagery, and that this is very much building on that. And I think the style of this painting is rather parallel to the Viennese secession art movement, which, for example, Gustav Klimt, who created that famous painting, The Kiss, about which I'll be talking later, he's very much associated with that artistic movement. But I consider this to be her finest painting. Right, so we have a mixture of different works on the wall here. You will remember me talking about Bilbo and the mixed media work. Well, here is the painting, which is essentially the same composition but done in paint. I think probably this was painted in acrylics. It's on canvas, but I don't think it's oil. I think this is done in acrylics. So there's actually a lot more detail in this than on the other one I showed you. Above it, this we think was a proposal for a mural, which my mother may or may not have actually got the commission for. It may not have gone any further than this. It was folded and put into a sketchbook, and we just found it like this and had it framed later. But I think the proportions of this very much suggest to me that it was meant to cover a long wall somewhere. This photograph actually shows my mother working on another mural with my then godmother in the early 1950s. So we know that she did murals. And this is a little bit later, but this is the artist Patrick Proctor, who did the main portrait of my father that hangs in the hall of Palace House, in the front hall. He came to stay, and it's difficult to work out exactly what's going on here, but it's almost as if they're playing some sort of game of miniature chess, but I'm not sure. They're both concentrating on something. Above the fireplace, this is very much, as you can see, in the style of those motoring costumes, but it's not a motoring costume, it's a one-off. And this used to hang in the night nursery, which I slept in as a very small child. And so, this lady, I call her the Pink Lady, I haven't got any other name for her, really has been part of my life since my very, very early days. Here I have created with my sister Mary really the kind of way my mother worked, with a work table full of different bits of work. And we've put here one of several pieces that she sadly never finished. And this, I mentioned the kiss earlier. Well, this is an embroidered interpretation of that painting. And it is sad that it never did get finished. But although all the central part is done, but this just gives you a feel for the kind of way she worked, with several jobs going on in parallel, some never getting finished, some being finished hurriedly. She could work very fast when she wanted to. And behind, I've just put up a selection of work that she produced through the years. And right at the top, you will see some rosettes, not all the rosettes that she had, but she was a horsewoman, and she particularly liked driving. And just at local level, she, as you can see, won quite a lot of rosettes. The painting on the easel here is Leap Beach, which is about 5 miles from here and very close to where she grew up. It's a semi-fantasy, as I don't think even in her younger days people rode topless on the beach, but who knows. But certainly the watch house building, that is still there, and this is the Isle of Wight in the background. So people who know Leap will possibly recognise that setting. For a while, my mother had a share in an Arab racehorse. She previously owned an Arab horse, which she rode very happily here at Beaulieu. But this is the silk that was produced for the jockey with the Montagu lozenges on it. And as it happens, many years before, she produced this little painting of jockeys, not wearing quite the same silks, but she absolutely loved horses. And so this is just one aspect of that. Got another nice bedhead here, sort of child dreamlike bedhead that she produced. And then this antique fire screen has been in Palace House for a long time, but the tapestry that was in here was really quite old and faded, and so she produced this new one showing geese, and seemingly geese flying across perhaps the full rising moon. This is a portrait of me as a little boy wearing my sailor's suit. Again, she never quite finished it. You can see she just started putting a hat on my head, but that was never finished. This is one of the pedal cars that we had as children to play with, which is now, I think, somewhere in the museum. My teddy bear, of course, and a much bigger bear whose name is Bruin, and he is on display in one of the rooms in the house, and he talks. Now, in the turret here, most of what you see here are costumes that my mother wore rather than made. In fact, the only things here that she made were these little waistcoats on the wall, which she made for my sister Mary. But the other items, some she definitely wore herself, others she inherited, we think, from her mother. I'll point out this this costume in the middle, this robe. Now, this is the counterpart to the Baron's coronation robes, which we display downstairs in Palace House. Now, my father attended the 1953 coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, but at that point he was a bachelor, and so there was no Lady Montagu to wear this. The previous coronation in 1937, he was a little boy, so again, there was no Lady Montagu to wear it. So we're really not sure when this was last worn. And I'm afraid the most recent coronation, peers of the realm like me didn't get invited, so there was no question of this costume being worn again. So the photograph we have here of my mother wearing it, this is purely her really modelling the costume here in Palace House. To the right of it is an interesting leather ensemble, which I well remember my mother wearing. It's the work of a designer called Bill Gibb, who made some wonderfully flamboyant creations. You have to remember that this is a bit low. I mean, you would have seen her lower legs, but it is a wonderful creation of very thin leather with screen printed silver floral imagery on top. And as I say, I well remember her wearing that. The next costume round, I think, is almost certainly would have been her mother's. It's got a lot of beads embroidered on it, and it's very heavy. And the next one round again, this red Chinese thing, she would have bought that whilst in the Far East, probably whilst travelling on the Queen Elizabeth II ship. She was there as the sort of in-house embroidery instructor. And of course, they had lots of fancy dress parties on board. And I think she just bought that for a bit of fun, along with some costume jewellery. Well, we now return to some of her wonderful embroidery and this splendid screen that she created and gave me. And again, it's mixed media because although it's made of material, she has here used some stencils and then spray inked these clouds in, whilst then embroidering more on top. This is my caravan, which I bought from Walhampton School, having looked after it at the school. But you can see here, obviously, one of her beloved horses. She loved illustrating clowns and monkeys, and it just really sums up a lot of the imagery that she loved to incorporate in her work. And on each side is a selection of small bags and boxes that she decorated, and all of them are wonderful pieces of work. I particularly remember her doing this, the date 1972. This was about the time she started on an embroidery course at Southampton Art College, and this was the point where she really switched her creative energies from painting and drawing to embroidery, and this was one of the early projects that she did, and it's a wonderful piece of work. And it shows again some of her animals. A donkey, we had donkeys, we did have pigeons or doves, white collared doves at Palace House, and around this side her then black whippet, Mariah. And if you go around there are others on the back. You can see the mirror. There's a Jacob sheep, another whippet, and a bantam, because she had bantams. I must mention this cushion and the other one on the other side. My mother created these for my wedding when at the point at which you kneel at the altar, it's appropriate to have special cushions. So this was the one created for Elsa with a cat in it, and the one on the other side with R, that's mine, and that of course has a whippet in it. So these are very special to us. Well, here is an interesting item. This was fun for me, creating this bit of the display. This was a costume she made for a fancy dress party she held with my father. My father went as King Charles I, and my mother went as Henrietta Maria, his consort. And I'm afraid it has become a bit discoloured in places. I suspect it's faded a bit, but we had this photograph, and it was just nice for me to be able to blow it up to exactly the size of the dress itself, but obviously showing my mother in the costume. And in fact, there she is again, sitting down with the costume on. And again, this was created by her before she did any training in embroidery. Along here, though, these are all creations that she made in later years. This was for another of my father's party. The theme of the party was If music be the food of love, play on. So she decided that she would come as a banana flambe. So you can see the flames depicted in the bottom of her dress. There's a banana up here in her hat, and it was a bit of fun for that occasion. This dress she actually made for my stepmother. I don't think it was for a particular occasion, but it is a splendid piece of work, wonderful silk here, and with a bag to match, very lovely bag. This dress my mother made for herself. Again, this harlequin patterning I very much associate with the circus and clowns, and I think that's reflected here. And this is significant because my mother made this for her own graduation from Southampton Art College when she completed her City and Guilds in embroidery. And so I would have been at school at the time. I wasn't there to see her wear it, but I think it's rather wonderful that you make your own dress for your own graduation ceremony. I'll just point out a couple of other things. This study behind was also produced as a screen print, which is not on display, but we have it, and in fact you can see below the different variations that she produced from this original using mixed media. And I'm going to actually finish just on this little painting here. Dogs and cats don't always get on well, but these two clearly did. And this was an Alsatian she had called Star, and a cat. I don't know the name of the cat, but they obviously got on quite well together. And she really loved her animals, and so often they appeared in her work. Well, this exhibition will remain here until early January. So if I've whetted your appetite, do come and have a look. But rest assured, quite a lot of what's on display will return to this room once we've returned it to being a bedroom. There will be a bed in here, but the walls will, of course, remain available to hang much of her work on.